an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Awaken Chapters 19, 20, and 21. In these chapters, well, Jordan finally goes up against the Crimson Shark, and it really feels a little bit like luck that she isn't dead. Like, don't get me wrong, she's a badass, but I'm surprised she came out on top. I sort of wondered how this was going to go. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Heather for commissioning this episode. Heather is here in the chat. So this is the final 3 chapters of the book. And like I said, it turns out like Jordan, saying that she sneaks up on Crimson Shark really makes it sound a little bit more purposeful than it was. He just happens to not be paying attention to her specifically at this point because he thinks she's sort of a foregone conclusion. But I gotta tell you guys, like, the way the fight was going up until that point, I had assumed that she gets away by the end of this book. I'm not expecting the main character protagonist to wind up a prisoner of this guy and for that to be how the first book ends. That said, she seems to be at such a disadvantage during that fight that I started to second guess myself. And I was sort of like, what if the book ends with her being captured or something else? You know, like, just things maybe don't go the way that I'm thinking they will. And for the most part, things did go the way that I expected, and I wasn't mad about that. But I kind of wanted there to be something more, like, surprising involving her. There is a reveal of something that is surprising involving her dad, as it turns out. Her dad's an alien? Am I getting this right? I think what I'm the most curious about is whether or not these aliens actually look the way they look to us, or if they have managed to do something that makes them look the way they look, and they actually look something very different. I have to assume they actually look the way they look, because otherwise I imagine that Jordan, upon birth, would look very different, and she wouldn't be able to pass as a human, you know? But yeah, that, like, you guys, you know, if you listen to the last episode, the way that Jill describes their father behaving, I was already like, what's up with this guy? Like, he's acting like they're going to be a target just because they have money. And I'm like, that's not really how that goes, at least not in this sort of way. You're a target when you have money in the way that people try and sell you shit. People try to get you to invest in shit. People try to become your friend and mooch off you, that sort of thing. But, like, people don't try and assault your family and break into your house. That's not really a concern, actually. So I already was on high alert due to him, like, sort of drumming that into their heads when I was feeling like that doesn't seem true at all. And it turns out there is a reason that it's a completely different thing than what I was thinking. And I'm not sure, but based on the way the conversation goes, it sounds like they are part of the group that is in opposition to whatever Lyndon's alien race is. I can't remember what they were called, but they got mentioned a couple times as being like people that they were warring with. Incarna. So are they Incarna? Did I have that right, Heather? Okay, yes, they are. Okay. And Heather says, don't forget that it wasn't all that long ago that the UK had real internal terrorist threats going on, and SAS dealt with that sort of thing all the time. I will be honest, Heather, I really don't know very much about that at all. So it's not so much that I should not forget it as that I should know it in the first place, because I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to that sort of thing. I'll be honest. She says the IRA. And right, like I have like a vague understanding of that is mostly fueled by action movies in the 90s and the Dairy Girls. And those are like the two sources that I've got on like any sort of reference point for that. But okay, I get what you're saying. So it makes slightly more sense, because I was just sort of, for me, I was hearing it and being like, is this guy like a militiaman? I was thinking about how this goes in the US, where people who behave like this are survivalists and paranoid and oftentimes like, low-key white supremacists or wanting to take over the government. And I was like, I don't really get the vibe that that's a thing that much in the UK the same way that it is here. But okay, so yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So yeah, I'm not trying to say at all that the ending of this book was without surprises, but I wish in some ways that there was a little bit more left in the air with Jordan specifically and what was going to happen to her. That said, I am really glad that she gets to have her wedding and just be normal for a little bit. I'm happy for her. There's a bit of me that was wanting there to just be adventure. But she's a person who has somebody that she would just like to, have a wedding and honeymoon with. And as somebody who is planning her own wedding, I sympathize. This is actually, I've been really struggling because of the way that the Delta variant has begun to make things kind of go back to the way they were. Whether or not I should have my wedding at all this year, because I postponed it from last year due to how bad everything was getting and feeling like that was really the only responsible thing to do. And I've been struggling with whether or not I want to postpone it again, because I postponed once and it didn't seem to do any good. The situation doesn't feel that unchanged from last year at this time. And I was talking with Rashawn and sort of came to the conclusion that I really want to have my wedding anyway, not because of just commitment to the date or anything like that, but because this has been such a bad year for so many of us. I just want something to look forward to and be excited about that's actually happening before the end of the year. I want joy, and it feels like I'm don't want to keep postponing that, hoping that things get better when we have no guarantee that's going to happen, So I'm just sort of making it clear everybody has to be vaccinated in order to attend the wedding, even though there's really not a lot I can do to strictly enforce that. I'm hoping that our friends and family are going to be respectful enough to not push it on that. And I don't think they'll be dicks. But, so yeah, in that respect, I was like, let me give Jordan this pass and let her just have some joy. She's just been through it. Almost died herself, almost thought her family was going to die. Shit went very left. And she's also being reprimanded for the way things went, because it's been revealed that they are metahumans is the word that winds up being used by Dr. Spears later. And it seems like that's getting picked up. I know I'm covering things out of order here, but I just wanted to mention how much I loved the talk that Dr. Spears has with his assistant, who is monitoring the language that's being used to describe these people and find out whether or not the terms that he has chosen are the ones that are being adopted at large. Because I found it really fascinating to stop and genuinely think about how that sort of thing works. If you are dealing with something brand new, there isn't language in place. You have the sort of language that one could use based on your knowledge of science fiction and comic books and all of that stuff. But if you are somebody like Dr. Spears, who's one, an actual alien, so he's got a whole other perspective. 2, a scientist. 3, has a vested interest in exactly how this goes. The idea that he would choose very carefully the type of language he uses in order to sort of guide the discussion itself makes a ton of sense. And it's something that happens every day. The way that people use language is obviously very purposeful and orchestrated in a certain way. But it's different when they are trying to rewrite language and say things a certain way versus actually getting to choose words to describe something that is totally new to humanity. That's a much more blank slate situation. And the fact that people are listening to him I mean, he's very smug about it, and honestly, I can't even be mad about it, because that's a pretty huge amount of power to have, you know? So I'm going to back up and talk about chapter 19. Chapter 19 starts from Jill's perspective, which I don't think I was like really expecting. I thought that we were going to go to Jordan and we were going to be in Jordan's head and seeing her be like, are you fucking kidding me, Jill? Where are you? Jesus Christ. And instead we start in Covent Garden and Jill is already at a Starbucks. I want to know what happened for the hours in between, because, you know, she left the house at 3 a.m. It was established that nothing was open. And now she is in the midst of like a busy shopping area. There had to be at least 4 hours of time. What did she do during that time? And we're in her POV and she doesn't think about or mention it at all. And I want to know what she was doing and what happened to Lex. Where is he? Who is he? And did he just drop her off at 3 a.m. in the middle of like empty London and just bounce? Because I was thinking that he was being forced to hang out with her, but she doesn't have him with her here. So I was sort of confused about the jump forward in time, because that time isn't actually accounted for at all. I was assuming when we jump back into this that we would be in Jordan's POV and it would still be the middle of the night. And instead, it's very busy. And that leads me to believe, like, people are out shopping. That sounds like at least 10 a.m. You know, I don't feel like that's going to be happening at 8 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'm I was about to say concerned, and then I almost said confused. And so first I said confirmed, and then I said concerned, confused about that. I'm just confused, clearly. Heather says, so here's what's not made immediately clear in the story. Cassidy's ancestral home is in Scotland, not England. It's about 8 hours from the Scottish border to London. Oh, okay. Wow. She really owes Lex way more than 50 pounds. That's a long ass fucking drive. Like, holy shit. I mean, I wouldn't blame him if he just dropped her off at a train station. Like, oh, that's, Heather just says, I assume she had him drop her off at a train station or something. Okay. Okay. That's fair. All right. That makes way more sense. Thank you, Heather. Cause yeah, I was just sort of like, what did she do for all that time? So she got to like sleep on a train on the way down. That's like this. I do those, Calm app sleep stories, and the train ones are my favorite. And the idea of getting on a train at like 3 a.m. and just heading down to London and just sleeping on the train, that's like the best. I'm actually very jealous of Jill right now. Okay. Wow. So at this point, Jill, like, she is wearing this outfit. The tight pink and white baby doll shirt she wore had a picture of a white cat wearing battle armor with a very large machine gun on it. I am dying to see this shirt because this feels too specific. That's a shirt that exists, right? That's definitely like a real shirt, and I want to see it. She also wore a pair of tight bell-bottom blue jeans, a pair of black and pink tennis shoes, of which she owned no less than 6 pairs, which that is something that I would do. When I find shit I like, I just want to buy like several because I like what I like. And once that thing runs out, I mean, you know, it happens all the time. I'm wearing a pair of sandals right now that I bought 2 pairs as soon as I realized that I liked them. And this is the second pair and they're almost worn out and I'm devastated because I just went to buy another pair and sure enough, they're not there anymore. And I'm just like, why? And yeah, I'll do that with like lip colors. I'll buy several lip colors. And the thing is, those expire. So that doesn't always work out. But yeah, I felt her on that. So it turns out she gets a 5-shot caramel macchiato. And I was like, okay, that's serious. If you get a venti, you usually get 3 shots, which is already quite a lot of caffeine. But 5, woo. All right, girl. I don't think I've ever had 5 shots in a day. I just can't handle that kind of caffeine. I'm not like that. There are some people who they could just drink coffee all day. And by the time they reach the end of the day, they've had coffee like after dinner and they can still go to sleep. Not I. That shit fucks me up. I'm very sensitive to it. So she's very smug, thinking that she pulled this shit off without a hitch. All too easy. The impact of a large, well-dressed man bumping into Jill shook her out of her brief moment of mental glory. "Excuse me," the dark-eyed man said in a friendly manner. "My apologies." I really thought this was going to be one of the shark men. Is this Shaw? It's not Shaw. She'd recognize Shaw. Is this Douglas? Because this is definitely somebody from Jordan's team, right? Or... Oh, Heather says it's Tretiak. Oh shit, I didn't realize that was Tretiak. That's really scary. I didn't realize that. Okay. Ooh. Heather shared a link with me. Sorry guys, hold on, I'm clicking on it. Oh my god, Halo Kitty, and it's the kitty. Oh my god, I need to send this to Owen. I mean, yeah, that's amazing. I really enjoy that. Thank you, Heather, for that. Owen's going to be like, why are you sending this to me without any context? Doesn't matter. There it is. So Jordan looms over her and she immediately knows, oh, fuck. And she tries to be like, do you want some coffee? And I'm like, what are you doing? I appreciated that everything goes down right in front of her face, because she gets very quickly brought down to earth about why she has been handled the way that she has. It takes a minute because she is such a brat here. She's such a dick about it. And eventually she like comes around, but sincerely, she's just completely clueless about the threat. And like, again, granted, Jordan isn't actually telling her anything. I feel like she could make something up at least. We find out later, Jill was used as bait very intentionally. And so that is probably why she wasn't told anything. Because I was saying like that would really ensure that she would be afraid and stay where she was. Turns out that's not what he wanted. So I like the fact that's explained, because that, like, I just assumed that was just going to be like, well, you know, people be dumb. And like, honestly, that's a true enough thing that as much as it can irritate me, I wouldn't be that hung up on it. I would just kind of be like, it would have been smart. But the fact that there's an actual explanation for it, I really appreciate. So yeah. Jordan, you guys are always getting to dictate my life to me. God, between you guys and mom and dad, I feel like I'm in the fucking military. I have friends and a life and school. I can't sit locked in the house like a criminal while you do whatever it is that you do. Bitch, you're 17. You absolutely can be locked in the house. 100%. 1,000%. Like, you just can. They weren't keeping you there for like a month. It was literally one night, and you couldn't even handle that. Like, shut up. I just have no patience. This is why I don't have kids. Fuck them. Fuck them kids. So, yeah. The men that are looking for me are very dangerous. Looking for you, Jordan. You. Not me. Yeah. What do you think they would do? Like, and here she is. You busted out, and here she is for you. You really just don't have any logic. Ugh. He won't return any of my texts. I liked him, Jordan. Ah! I'm sorry for that, Jill. I truly am, but you need to be picked up right away. I would never ruin something for you if there wasn't a good reason. And this is when Jill tries to be like, I know self-defense, and Jordan's like, yeah, that's just not gonna do it. So you're either coming the way that I'm telling you you're coming, or we are going to actually put you in a jail cell. And Jill is like, you can't be serious. And she's like, 100%. That isn't fair. I know. Life frequently isn't. I'll do my best to end this so that you can get back to living your life. I love you, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, even if it means causing you some inconvenience. Fine, but you owe me big for this. You owe me big. I'm going to miss my graduation ceremony if you don't sort this out in a week. I refuse to miss that. Which she won't miss, so that's cool. So then, somebody takes Jordan's wrist and holds it. And this weird thing happens. Jordan it's Tretiak talking to her. And he's like, you know what I can do. If you come along peacefully, there won't be a need for violence. And she's feeling this weird sensation. Jordan replied softly. She was having trouble focusing on anything besides the Crimson Shark's voice. She felt intoxicated, but it was more than that. It felt like every instinct was telling her that she needed to obey him. You didn't think I was going to all of this trouble to satisfy some petty need for revenge, did you? I need an equal, a mate. He released his grip on Jordan and lifted the hand to cup her cheek. Warmth spread through Jordan's body, and her eyes slowly closed. Yes, she wanted what he was offering. She was certain of it. There was someone she should be thinking of, but Jordan couldn't remember his name or his face. All she could think of was Tretiak. He was her world. The Crimson Shark's touch thrilled her. His black eyes drew Jordan closer, and she moved to place her hands on his chest. Yes. Is this like a pheromone thing? What is going on here? Let's see. Heather says, rereading the passage with the guy bumping into Jill, I think I was wrong. I actually think that was Douglas. Okay. Because I would have thought that Tretiak would be a little bit more threatening in the moment, but then I was like, well, maybe he thinks Jordan's watching, and then I was like, well, but if she saw him, wouldn't she have reacted differently? So yeah. All right. And yes, pheromones. Okay. This is one of those things that, pheromones are used a lot in various things to explain why certain things happen. And I don't know enough about how a lot of this shit works to know if this is just like an exaggerated version for the sake of sci-fi, or if this is actually a way that pheromones can genuinely affect people if they are used correctly or amplified in a certain way. All I will say about this is, if you have ever been around a person who's like scent triggers something with you, it can be really wild how much you have to work to control yourself. Just saying. I have been in that situation before, like at work. I remember this at the bank. There was a guy, and he wasn't even like hot exactly. Like, he was attractive, but there was something about the smell of him when he walked up, and I felt myself just flush. And I had to avoid eye contact with him. And he like handed me something, and his hand touched me, and I felt like I had been burned. Like my hand lit up, and I was just like, whoa. And I just had to back off and let myself but it was a weird thing. So I'm not even that like unsure that this could happen, you know? And that's the thing that gets really annoying about being like a human in a flesh bag, is that we like to pretend that we're like intellectual, rational beings, but our bodies have us at their mercy so much more than we want to admit. We act like we can decide shit, and it's like, we can decide some things, but a lot of stuff just happens the way it happens because our body decided that's how it was going to go, you know? So Jill looks up at Tretiak, and she yells, "What are you doing?" Grabs Jordan's arm and yanks her away and says, "Get the fuck off her, you wanker." Which, I'll say this, Jill's got some balls, you know, like, and she looks up at him in that moment and is just like, oh, he's gonna kill me. He like punches her in the face, and I think punches. It's hard. It's the impact against her cheek and the blow drove her to the ground. I think that's a punch. The wrath she saw in them terrified her. He was going to kill her. Jill was never more certain of anything in her life. She was too scared to move as Tretiak reached for her throat with one of his massive hands, but his wrist was suddenly grabbed before he could reach it. "Leave her alone," Jordan growled, and snapped her foot up to catch one of the Crimson Shark's thugs in the jaw. Yay! Jordan's back! So, here's when shit really begins to go left. And I will tell you what. This is one of those that I feel like it's unfair. Later on, Jordan and Douglas get sort of blamed for the fact that they used their powers in full view of people. I just really want to know what alternative these guys thought there was at this moment. Because these two, Jordan and Douglas, they are not the ones that can turn into shark people. And they aren't the ones who did that in front of a crowd in Covent Garden, which is like one of the most crowded parts of London. So we've got these guys transforming into their most intimidating, powerful forms in the midst of a bunch of civilians. And you don't want your people using their powers? What exactly do you suggest then? Like, that is the only option. I mean, they start specifically targeting civilians later on in the fight in order to draw out their, like, operatives. That's like, just genuinely, I want to know if they are this mad at Jordan and Douglas, what they think should have happened here. Because Jordan didn't attack him in the street on her own. He came at her on the street himself. There was nothing to be done about it. And the shark guys are the ones who decide that they're going to transform in front of everybody. Which that was a wild choice. They just decide to fucking go for it here and now. And I just didn't really... What I assumed is that this is part of the whole thing where they lose the control of their temper and begin to transform without actually like necessarily intending to, because it seems like this transformation can be a reaction more than it can be intentional. So my assumption is that they like get so angry and so determined to fuck a bitch up that once they get tossed, it's sort of like an involuntary transformation because they're trying to access as much power as they can. Heather says, I think they wanted them to try to draw them away from the civilians. I mean, like, it's Covent Garden. How far do you think they can draw them? That's like the heart of London. You know, this isn't like you could draw them miles and they would still be in amongst tons of like there's just nowhere for them to go to get them away from people. That's just not going to happen, guys. The genie is out of the bottle and this is not down to the two of them. Heather says, this is like the whole people getting pissed off about Man of Steel and the fight in Metropolis. Even if Clark had tried to lead Zod off or forced him out of the city, he'd have come back. I never saw Man of Steel. That's Zack Snyder, isn't it? I never saw that. I have heard about this, though, that basically Superman, like, trashes Metropolis. But, yeah, I mean, like, part of the thing with villains is that they often attempt to like use people against you because they know that is something that's going to distract you or like weaken you. And I put weaken in quotes because that's always what villains think. So yeah, I don't really like just their ideal circumstance. I understand that would have been nice, but considering the situation they were actually working within, I just don't, and especially as it turns out that like Jill was specifically used as bait on purpose. You didn't expect this shit to go down in the middle of the city? Really? If you used her as bait, The whole thing was that you expected her to break out. Where did you think she'd go? Of course she's going to go to a city. Of course she's going to go do fun things like a teenager. So, yeah, naturally, whatever goes down is likely going to be centered around her because that's the way you orchestrated it. So what is your deal, even? Heather says, I like Man of Steel, and capitalized like... very defensive out of the gate, Heather. I've never seen it. I'm just saying. I believe you, like that you like it. I'm just... All I know is that Owen got really angry in the trailer when Clark's parents tried to tell him you don't owe people anything, because he's like, that is the opposite of what his parents teach him. And then basically just never saw the movie. So as far as I know, but I have never seen it. I don't have strong feelings about Superman the way that Owen does also. And I think that's another part of it, is that if you've grown up with a certain character and they have meant a lot to you personally, you're going to be very, very like protective of how they're depicted ever, you know? And that's just not a great recipe most of the time, because nobody's going to be able to read your mind and do exactly what you're hoping for ever. But anyway, okay, so this fight, I'm not going to go blow by blow, pun intended, with this fight, but just overall, Jordan is like fighting this guy, the Crimson Shark. And I really enjoy, especially later on when she starts to like actually punch him. His skin is so rough that like it's causing her knuckles to start bleeding and stuff as she's beating the shit out of him. And I say beating the shit out of him more in that she's really like going at him hard than he is having shit beat out of him, because he's essentially like a statue. She's punching and kicking and pounding at him, and he's just sort of letting her get it out of his system. That's the impression I get, is he's just like, yeah. Go ahead, tire yourself out, you know, like a little kid having a tantrum. But initially when he's going after her, before she actually like starts to rain blows down on him, he comes after her over a bunch of cars, and there's just so much destruction here. So I love at one point, the Sharkmen are just trying to slow down pursuit by ripping pieces off cars and chucking them down the street behind them, which is truly something that I would love to see on screen. Is just like, yank, pulled off a tire, chucked it. Yank, pulled off the roof of this car, chucked it. Yank, pulled off that fender, chucked it. I mean, that sounds really funny. That sounds like the kind of thing that'd be like, like it would be tense to watch, but it would also be amusing. His large his large fist shattered the back passenger side window and sprayed glass into the car's interior. Despite his bulk, the Crimson Shark was fast. Before Jordan had finished her evasion, the Crimson Shark's booted foot struck her in the stomach and sent her tumbling over the back of the car's trunk. She tumbled into the ground on the other side and was left gasping for breath. I'm glad you decided to put up a fight. It'll make your surrender all the sweeter. I won't surrender to you. Then I'll have to break you. This is the one criticism I'll levy to this scene. This exchange of dialogue, for me, felt a little cliched. This felt like I've seen this before. And on the one hand, I feel like the Crimson Shark is not probably somebody with hugely original ideas. So I wouldn't be that mad at him saying this sort of thing. But Jordan replying the way that she did, later on, there's a really good bit where he says something like, now you finally know what I have to offer. And she's just like, you mean bad breath? I don't think so. And that I thought was great. But here, I wanted her to come back with something like a little bit more interesting than just, I won't surrender. And, you know, him being like, well, then I'll have to break you. It's just like, that is like the kind of shit that creep on Reddit would say in somebody's DMs. Trechek was already moving toward her to fulfill his promise. She was moving as fast as she could, a nearly invisible blur. She pulled the twin .45 pistols from the small of her back and squeezed the triggers as fast as the weapons would allow. To Jordan's surprise, Trechek actually appeared to be moving when every other person in the area was almost statue-like. And I like this. This really gives the impression of how fast he must be moving. Everyone else is frozen in place, but not that asshole. And that made me genuinely nervous. Like, I was just... If he can even come close to matching her in speed, that's a massive part of her advantage gone. And she is shooting at him and just shredding his suit, and it does not seem to be really affecting him very much. She lashes out with her foot and sends him spinning out over a car, and he crashes through the wall of a bookstore. And I was just like, I swear to God, bookstores already have it hard enough. Do we have to do this to them too? They're already going through it. Come on, man. Give them a break. I don't know if their insurance is going to cover this sort of thing. So this is when she sees one of the men transforming into a shark. And later on, we find out that there's like so many people that are just standing around with their phones out, which I've got to be honest, might be me. And I know that's not super smart, but how do you not stop and film that? I mean, there's like, I would just be like, nobody's going to believe me. I'm going to tell this story and nobody is going to believe me. I have to film this. Like, I can't just not, like there's just, will I try and get away somewhere safe to film from? Sure. But I would still probably do it, which is not like the best way to live my life. Why do I have to be more worried about whether somebody's going to believe me than about living to the end of the day? But priorities. I never said they were straight. So this is when Douglas jumps in. Oh, I like that. Heather says maybe they can use it as a marketing ploy at the bookshop. Superhuman fight happened here. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea. I could see that. Now that one of the mercs had chosen to reveal himself, the rest of Trechek's men followed suit. The mercenaries' human bodies quickly grew and distorted as they took the nightmarish form that was half shark and half man. Each was well over 2 meters tall, and all of them were nothing but muscle, claws, and razor-sharp teeth. Bollocks, Jordan breathed. So Douglas jumps in and starts helping her out with managing some of these guys. You take the 5 on the left, I'll take the 5 on the right. And at this point, a jet comes into view above them and begins to drop a bunch of people off onto the roofs. And some of the mercs start climbing up the outsides of the building toward them, which I don't know why I found that to be so like... There was something about that felt very animal-like. They could have just kept fighting on the ground and waited for those dudes to sort of come into their orbit. But instead, they just couldn't wait. They couldn't help themselves. And there was something about that I just felt like a dog that sees somebody with a ball. And it's like, well, that person was about to come outside with the ball, but the dog sees the ball and sprints inside toward them. And it's like, was that the best choice? So here comes Chance, and I really love this. We don't get a lot of Chance, but he has this bit of where a guy like trips, and it's sort of like this inexplicable trip, and he's just like, what the fuck? As he goes like down face first. And another guy, Chance, throws a grenade, and it like the shark guy catches it and holds it in his hand for a second, and it's like, what the, before it explodes and just takes his hand off. I loved this so much. This was one of those things like just I kind of wanted like Benny Hill music to play here, but it just reminded me of what is her name? Is it Domino? In in Deadpool, and he has that long monologue about how like an ability that is based on like probability is not cinematic or fun to watch, and that whole monologue is like run over this sequence of her having these incredible near misses, and it's just very excellently done, and it's just reminded me a lot of that. And I just like the idea of this dude catching this and looking at it being like, what? For a second, and before it blows up. It's just honestly really funny. Like, it's fucked up, but it's funny. So she gets her ribs broken, 2 ribs broken here. And this is when he says, "Did you see the power of the gift I offer you? If you're talking about the bad breath, I think that I'll pass." Oh, I genuinely found that funny. Apparently, the lesson must continue. I was really hoping that she would get him super mad with that, but he's just too cool for it. And I was just like, God damn it. Get insulted, man. You suck. And then he chucks her into an iron pole 50 feet away. The resonant sound of the hollow pole stopping her flight was the last thing Jordan was aware of before the world dimmed around her. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. And we jump to Jill's POV, and she just saw her sister get like thrown into this pole, and she's like, motherfucker. And then thinks, this is my fault. Jordan wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for me. And I'm like, bitch, yes, correct. Like, I am not going to say this is all her fault, because this guy was coming after Jordan anywhere. So he would have wound up catching up to her and shit would go down. But in this specific place, and her getting in trouble the very specific way that she does, that is your fault. You were set up, but they depended on the fact that you were going to act like an idiot, and you did. So that's entirely on you. So she says, fuck this. I'm coming, Jordan. And later on, she winds up taking down the very last of the remaining Sharkmen in a great I love the fact that it says in the text that there was like the sound of an engine, and then it says, and an air horn. And I don't think that it's meant to be the reggaeton air horn that I imagined. I think it's meant to be like a truck horn, like, you know, but all I could think was as she runs the guy over, like she was playing Pitbull on the stereo as she came at him. And I am not going to alter that in my mind at all, because that is amazing. I can just imagine how insulting it would be to be run down by somebody playing Gasolina at top volume, and I would just never live that down. Oh, God. So then we go to Portsmouth and his POV. And he's looking at this. He's just like, oh, this is really, really bad. It says he had never felt as old as he did right now, nor as overwhelmed. Is Portsmouth the guy who was such a douchebag to her? I couldn't remember. Okay, he is. All right. Thank you, Heather, because he winds up having like a moment with her. And you can tell that she's sort of like, wow, you helped me. I didn't really expect that. And I was just like, man, that's like, you know, doesn't speak super highly of you, Portsmouth, that you had such a shitty attitude that she just didn't even know that she could depend on you in battle. Like, you may want to reevaluate the energy you give off when your teammates who are on your side against literal monsters just don't really know if they can rely on you to have their back. That feels like a bad thing. But they wind up being on the same team by the end. And let's see. Portsmouth says, I'm going after her. You stick with your brother and keep working on these bastards. This is the part. The Merc had a shocked expression as he inexplicably tripped over a discarded car door and went face down on the ground. Chance hopped up and used its head for a stepping stone. He steps on his head. I swear. The disrespect. So, Portsmouth spied the creature that had Jordan making its way quickly up the street toward the alarmed crowd of onlookers. Yeah, you think? And I should mention too that they have like brought a bunch of really intense weaponry, and it's not doing as much as they were hoping it would do. They're really having to like get completely on target repeatedly, but to be able to do any damage. Later on, he like winds up, here it is. Her body tumbled free and came to a stop next to a half-full bicycle rack. Portsmouth continued forward, pumping round after round into the creature's body until he came around to its head. With a grim look of satisfaction, Portsmouth put the PCR up to the creature's eye and fired the remaining 3 rounds into it. The plasma rounds exploded inside the Vodnik's brain cavity, causing smoke and flame to pour out of both eye sockets and its gill slits. Oof. Like, I guess if somebody were going to just try and light me up with a rocket, probably, like, I would have fire come out my nostrils. That would look real bad. Can you imagine? Like, finding somebody who had burn marks around the empty sockets of their eyes and their nostrils so that you know that, like, fire came out of those orifices. What do you do with that? Like, man. And I like that he like does this and then reloads and watches it and is like ready to fucking hit it again. He's got the double tap Zombieland / John Wick sort of attitude about this, and I appreciate it. But yeah, so eventually the Crimson Shark gets a hold of him, and he is really fucking going to town on this guy. He is just like, he calls him weak and says he's prey. And as he is about to do like one final death blow, Jordan jumps in and grabs his hand. Jordan held Portsmouth's discarded plasma cartridge rifle, and she jammed the barrel up into the Crimson Shark's armpit, which I was like, that is not a spot I would think of as being a weak point, but like 100% it is. It's just not. I feel like this was mentioned by Lyndon when he did like his report, but I might be wrong about that. She squeezed the trigger and poured several rounds against Trechek's skin. The Crimson Shark roared in pain as the plasma bolts tore through his flesh and burned vital organs. Snarling like a wounded beast, the leader lashed out with his clawed hands, driving Jordan back several steps. Undeterred, she kept the trigger depressed and emptied all 50 rounds into the body. Smoking and charred, the mercenary leader fell to his knees, down but not out. I was like, 50 rounds, and this motherfucker's still alive. I should mention, too, that when he transforms into a shark, he's like a meter taller than everybody else. Even though they have his blood and they transformed into similar creatures, he is by far the bigger, badder one. So she smashes him in the head so hard that the weapon breaks. And then she grabs him and like kind of does the equivalent of the Hulk with Loki, where she just like smashes him into things just to fucking like make sure that he's out. And then she takes the bike rack out of the ground and wraps it around him to sort of hold him down. And he's, again, not out, but he gets captured by the end of this, but he's not dead. And I'm really curious what's in store for him because, like, I mean, this guy is clearly very badass. I feel like he's going to get away again. Like, this is not a man who's going to be in prison for long. I just don't... he's gonna heal, right? Like, anyway, so this is when Portsmouth and her are like talking and they're acting like it's all over, and then they look up and they see this dude. The shark man was crushed beneath the wall of green metal that was the rubbish hauler. Weaponless and wounded, she prepared to go down fighting when the roar of a diesel engine and the sound of an air horn, that's the part where I was talking about, drowned out the pounding of her heart. So yeah, the vehicle kept going, pulling the Vodnik beneath its 6 wheels as it collided with a parked delivery lorry a few feet away. The impact caused a chain reaction several cars long. That was really fun. Yeah. And Jill jumps out and is just like, hey, hope I helped somewhat. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. Chance says something at one point about like, we just changed the world. And we have a moment with Jill and Jordan talking, and Jill actually outs herself with like about having her ability to see what's going on with people and whether they're sick and whatnot. And Jordan is still with Portsmouth and is like, you should really keep that shit to yourself. And Portsmouth is like, yeah, don't tell anybody. And Jill at first is just like, well, okay, I won't. But then she sees the look on Jordan's face and she's like, I promise I won't. She can see that Jordan's concerned for her. So chapter 20, we have like the fallout and them talking about what was going on and the, the reveal. They can try and crack down on some of the footage being shared, but like the more you crack down on it, the more suspicious it begins to look. Like there's really not a lot you can do once it's out there. The squadron had lost 9 men with 14 injured. Out of those 14, 3 would never be able to work in the field again, and 1 was an invalid. The civilian cost was much higher. 8 had died during the battle, and a further 5 more had died of their injuries. Over 50 people had been hurt, some minor, but some were still on life support. The Vodnik had intentionally attacked the civilians in order to draw the SOS-7 team out of cover and force them to engage close range. So this is when McIntyre comes in, and he says, I'm half tempted to eject you both from the agency. And I'm just like, again, dude, what did you want them to do? Like, genuinely, there was just no other option. Shit went left where it went. And that guy is the one who initiated it, not them. So I really don't know what you want from them, but you're going to need to calm the fuck down. Why don't you stop being so hysterical, okay? And he mentions that, like, there's a lot of film of the fight, but there have been no clear shots of Douglas or Jordan's faces, which is extremely lucky. What is clear is people turning into walking sharks and tossing cars around. Every news channel is playing this footage. There is no other story right now. Dr. Linden feels this incident is only going to encourage awakened human beings to emerge from the shadows and start acting openly. Robbing banks, holding governments hostage, killing, those are just going to be the start. Every normal human will live in fear. And thankfully, Jordan comes out with, why? Why does it have to be like that? We can react to this all like any way we want. You guys are acting like we're just going to keep hiding. Why would we do that? We know it's like that people have figured it out. Humanity knows. We can just protect and inspire people now. Show them that we're there and that we're among them and that we're good people and can protect them from the ones that aren't good people. And I was like just really thankful because, yeah, they were acting like this was sort of a foregone conclusion. And I'm like, you don't have to tell them who Jordan and Douglas are. But I feel like if you explain to people that those guys were like, first of all, just say that they were Russians, and Americans are immediately going to be like, oh, the shark men were Russians? Yeah, evil bastards. Like, right there, you've already got 50% of the country on your side, that we had the heroes protecting us. Like, that would be just right there, half the battle won. And then, yeah, if you are able to like get in touch with other Awakens and control the way that they like come out and create some sort of organization that is, meant to help, then I feel like people have an instinctual like reaction to this sort of thing, I think, from media and fantasy and comic books, where they're going to see this as a good thing in a lot of cases, I think. it's a sort of thing that, like, you know, depending on the ability, but I just don't believe that the reaction would be across the board as fearful and angry as it seems like they were expecting. So, okay, this is when we go to, Ethan and Cassidy having a drink. And McIntyre just, like, he pours a drink and then just says cheers, which honestly is ballsy AF considering what the fuck is going on right now. He's just trying to act like shit's normal. And I'm like, what are you, like, you have to know how enraged this guy is right now. Like, come on. Cassidy raised his own drink and downed nearly half of it before he sat the glass back down on the desk. He glanced to the side and caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the window. And this is the first instance where we find out that, like, he was that he has been around for quite a while, as it turns out. I should have realized sooner that probably Ethan was, like, one of the alien guys, because it seems like everybody who's sort of in charge of these operations is from another planet at this point. Anybody who occupies a position of, like, real authority and decision making, you know. Cassidy thought his reflection looked as angry as he felt. No, anger was a poor choice of words. He was furious. If you ever use one of my daughters as bait again, I'll kill you. I did what I had to do. I thought Jill would rabbit if she had half a chance, and she did. So is that why Marissa didn't stop her? Well, Marissa wouldn't be in on using Jill as bait. I don't think she'd be okay with that. I don't know. Maybe she would. Maybe she's cold-blooded. The shark wanted Jordan, and it was pretty clear he was going after loved ones to draw her out. I used his own trap to catch him. In the old days, you would have made the same call. Besides, my people were watching her the entire time. It was a calculated risk, and it paid off. And Cassidy is just like, dude, no. Like, you can talk about how this paid off and it was calculated. I don't want to fucking hear it. Jill is a kid, and she doesn't have the same sort of energy that Jordan does. She was in over her head. She could have died, like, easily. What are you doing? You put her in a position where she had to kill someone, and now she has to carry that with her, to which McIntyre says, her mother said she's been her typical self. No obvious change in personality or demeanor. Maybe you need to give her more credit. She's tough, just like the rest of your family. The sound of Cassidy's hand slamming against the top of McIntyre's desk was unusually loud. Yeah. I mean, stop trying to talk rationally about this situation. Just stop it. Just stop it. I understand the impulse to be defensive, but, like, literally don't. Just don't do it. It hasn't sunk in yet, and when it does, she's going to be devastated. You stole her innocence, and I can't forgive you for that. I'm sorry for that, but I would do it again if I had to. And Cassidy says that his children aren't part of the war, and McIntyre's like, look, dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're an alien. Yeah, they are. Like, there's just no avoiding that. That's 100% how this is. We're not the only ones here either. Like, you know, we know that there's another, and he calls them Jennies, which I do prefer because it's silly on the one hand, which I kind of like calling, like, big scary bad guys by a silly name. And also it's just easier. He says they're not going to leave Earth alone forever. We know that Lyndon isn't the only one here. And apparently they don't know about Spears. They don't realize that he's one. So I am surprised that Lyndon hasn't shared that with him. Because he says he's been good covering his tracks. So far he hasn't led us to any more of them. And I feel like Lyndon should tell them, because he has heard what Spears' attitude is. And I just think that's irresponsible for him to keep that shit to himself at this point. Like, come on, man. You have to know what he's doing. He's out here just torturing people and killing them. You know, like, it's no good, Lyndon. I judge you for not sharing that. We need our numbers up. Humanity is awakening, and we need to steer them in the right direction. Jordan can help do that if she's half the leader you are. She's already got the charisma. I'm giving her the experience. Why didn't you just tell me you were going to recruit Jordan? Because I knew this would be your reaction. Even if you've decided to leave the war hasn't left you. I needed her. I need her skills and her powers. I'm going to root out the Jenny cells, and she's going to help me. And Cassidy is just saying that they don't think like humans. She doesn't know anything about them. How do you think she's going to do any better than the rest of the team who are humans? Like, when she's working off of the same information. And McIntyre's just like, because she's your daughter. And I'm like, I don't know, McIntyre. Like, I get your point in theory, but that feels very weak to me. And yeah, he says, let me worry about educating her. And Cassidy's just like, oh yeah, because I trust you so much now. I doubt it. I'm going to go. And he leaves, and McIntyre watches him and is just like, yeah, shit's different now between us, isn't it? Like, it's just never going to go back to how it was. So then we go to 21, and this is the scene where Spears is controlling the way that this is all being spoken about. And he does this whole, like, we need to embrace metahumans. They need us. They've been living in the dark, outcasts, afraid, alone, and used. And then he talks about how, like, I would like to offer them a program where they can come and we can, like, make sure that there are no weird genetic side effects to the ways in which their abilities manifest themselves. And I was like, ooh, guys, I hope that you hear what he's saying. Like, to me, the threat is very clearly there, but I can see how a dude who's talking as if he is totally on your side would feel really, that would be a temptation, you know? So yeah, our world as we have known it is much bigger than we ever dreamed. Perhaps one day all of us will be able to fly. Spears paused dramatically and let his words permeate hearts and minds of millions, if not billions, who were watching or would watch this impromptu interview. So yeah, you're trending up on Twitter by 43% over yesterday. Imagine stock has gone up 280% since Revelation Day, which is evidently what he called it and what everybody else has also started calling it. So, yeah, he is feeling very smug about this whole thing. And then he gets a call from somebody, Whip Scorpion, which is a hell of a name. And Whip Scorpion tells him, we've got your order. Delivery will take place on schedule. And I'm like, I don't like the order for me, I am assuming is a person. And I am not excited about how that's going to work out. But it would be really funny if it was Crimson Shark's body. Because I hated Crimson Shark. And if he, after acting the way that he does towards Spears, gets to be dissected by Spears, although he's still alive. But nevertheless, that would be fun. So yeah, this is when he tells his assistant, tell Mia Strong, invite her to dinner. I'll send my private jet to collect her and we'll have dinner in Monaco. Tell her to pack a bag. And I was like, honestly, if a dude just sent me a plane and told me to pack a bag for Monaco, I can't help but be like, yeah, all right, fine. I don't like to be bossed around except when I do. And like a trip to Monaco is one of the exceptions. That's fair. So then we go to the epilogue. And this is just Jordan and Brian hanging out after the wedding. And I do enjoy, he slipped his arms around her waist. How many times are you going to look at it? Jordan smiled and brushed aside the train of her wedding gown to reveal the armored case sitting on the table below where she had hung the bulky garment. Inside the open polymer container sat a neatly folded black suit, a pair of armor-plated armor-plated knee-high boots, matching gauntlets, and a small curved mask. So yeah, it's like treated as if she's like gazing lovingly at her wedding dress for a second, and then immediately it's like, no, she's got this badass fucking like gear in here. And he's like, play Batgirl later, come back to bed. And she's like, all right. And she starts to walk away from it, and he stops her and says, bring the boots and the mask. And I was like, you know what, Brian? Good for you. Because I'll tell you what, if I had a boyfriend who was like a fucking secret agent type and he had this shit, you had to better believe that I'm going to be telling him to wear it. Oh, you just like, no joke. That would just become such a thing that he would start to be like, can you just like not ask me to wear a mask? I'm starting to feel like you don't like my face anymore. Like, I think he'd start to get offended. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm a big fan also of like the look of those shoulder gun holsters that dudes wear in movies a lot when they have to like wear a gun under their jacket. Sexy AF, love those. Yeah, I'm trying to think what other like gear is super hot. I remember a formative moment for me was in Independence Day when Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum are both in their like pilot gear, and they're walking towards them in the desert after having been victorious, smoking cigars, and that like pilot uniform with like the whole like body harness and everything, because I think they had, if I'm not mistaken, what do you call it when you jump out of a plane? Parachutes. That was a good look too. Like that one. So yeah, what I'm saying is, Brian, I get you, buddy. I see you. I feel you. So, all right. Heather is in the chat agreeing with me. Yay. All right. I'm going to wrap up. Heather, tell me the name of the next book so that I can tell everybody else what to look for. Evolve. All right, everybody. If you're reading along, Evolve is the next book. So go and find it. And Garth Reesby. And she says there's lots more chance in book 2. Oh, cool. Chance is fun. All right, cool. I will be seeing you guys. Let's see. Next week I'm taking off. Friday, October 8th with the start of Evolve. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.